we have the honor to introduce Chef Max Santiago. Max?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I am the executive pastry chef of the restaurants here at the Miami Culinary Institute. All right. In front of you, you have a set of recipes. We're just going to be making the second one down, which is the chocolate crème, which crème is just a fancy French word for a very velvety chocolate mousse. And then just down below it, we're going to be doing the olive oil dust. So we're going to go ahead and start with the chocolate crème. A basic chocolate mousse is just whipping cream and adding melting chocolate to it. In this base, we have a sabayon that goes into the actual mousse. And a sabayon is basically, it's a custard. And it's going to add a lot of richness to it. So we're going to cook some egg yolks and some sugar together. It's going to make it nice and velvety and rich. And that gets folded in. So I really like this recipe. All right, we're going to start in the procedure here. We're going to get first our water boiling because we're going to have a water bath. So that's back here already boiling. And we're going to use this bowl here to make the sabayon. That's going to go over the water bath. So make sure you're using a bowl that fits well onto your pot. This ice bath is going to be needed for the gelatin sheets. There are different types of sheets that come in different thicknesses. This one in particular is a silver gelatin sheet. I'm not going to get super technical on you, but it's a much easier way to handle the gelatin. The only thing you have to do is soak it in ice bath, in ice. And we're going to basically what's called bloom this gelatin. Okay, and you have to rehydrate it. You have to get it full with water before we use it. We can't just add the dried gelatin into our. Now what this is going to do is it's going to be a really soft mousse in the beginning, and this is going to, once it sets, it's going to help hold it together. Okay, so it's a vital necessity. We get that going. That's blooming. It only takes about 5 minutes in ice water. The next step we're going to do is you're going to see the 2 cups of milk. That's going to get brought to a boil. And this step right here, folks, is called a ganache. I don't know if you're ever familiar with that term. Some of you might be. A ganache is a very versatile sauce in the pastry world. It basically consists of 2 things. It's usually heavy cream. In this case, we're using a milk. It can be pretty much any liquid. And it gets boiled and poured over the chocolate. And that gets melted together, and it forms a chocolate sauce. So that gets going. The next thing, while that's boiling, see, we got all kinds of stuff going on here. We're going to take our last step, which is the heavy cream. We're going to bring this to a medium peak. If none of you know what a peak is, and when you touch it and lift it up, a soft peak will just barely hold. It'll fall. Medium peak is going to have a peak that sticks up and falls over, and a stiff peak is going to lift up. So watch this. Make sure it doesn't go past a medium peak. That means it's just starting to get a little firm. Okay, do not go over. The chocolate, the thing that's important about chocolate is you see that there's a percentage next to it. That percentage means how intense of the chocolate mass or liqueur, it's called either the 2, it has. So the higher in percentage, the more bitter and less sweet it is. If it has a lot more, a lot more percentage and has less sugar, the less sugar that there is in your recipe, the stiffer that it's going to be, the thicker that it's going to be, because sugar turns to liquid when it's heated. So we're almost to a boil up here. Right now, you lift this up. It's going to kind of, I'll start you on here. Lift it up. It doesn't really hold its peak. It kind of falls over. We're just going to take this a little bit further. Now we're at medium peak. See the difference? How much more body this has? It's like just a little bit holding up. All right. You might get distracted, and then if it's sitting out, it's going to get too soft on you. So keep it cool. All right, and this should be pretty much coming to a boil. Yeah, we're ready here as well. So do not walk away far from milk when you're boiling it, because milk overboils and you'll have a mess everywhere. All right, so stay close. All right, so this is boiling now. That's just going to get poured right over the chocolate inside of a large stainless steel bowl. And when you first pour it over, just let it, I shake it. I let it come in between the layers of chocolate, and that's going to soften it. Because if I start to whisk this right away, you're going to get a big ball of chocolate in the middle of your whisk. Sometimes you're going to see a ganache that looks like it's a little bit grainy. That usually just means that the chocolate isn't completely melted yet. Okay? If you let it sit a few more minutes and then whisk it again, you'll see that it's really nice and shiny and smooth. So I'm going to bring this pot that was boiling to here. We're going to put our eggs or our egg yolks right into here. Stainless steel bowl, remember that fits well into here, not too deep. What's important when you're doing this step, folks, is that the water that's boiling should never touch the bottom of your bowl. So you don't want to get a really big pot that your bowl just sits really deep into. It should never be touching, and it should be at just boil, a small simmer. So you got all the egg yolks in here, right? All right, we're ready to go. We're going to put our sugar. And I want to tell you another really important note here. Whenever you're going to be cooking sugar and eggs or egg yolks or whole eggs, either one, do not add your sugar till you're actually ready to begin cooking. Because sugar, even if it's off the heat, is another form of cooking when it's added to eggs. It starts to break the proteins down. So put that all in there, start whisking it. All right, we're not going to use this whisk. And another reason, and it's a good thing I'm going to show you, there's different types of whisks out there. This is more of what's called a balloon whisk. See how many prawns it has? Versus this one that's light. I use this one in the ganache because I didn't want to have a lot of air bubbles, right? So the more prawns that it has, the more air you can whip into it, which is going to be great for this. All right, start whisking this up. Whenever you're doing this, don't have the fire at the bottom coming over the sides and burning your bowl. The fire should be on pretty high, like warm and hot, but it should be all underneath your pot. We can kind of see it there at this angle. That's great. As this cooks and as he whisks air into it, the whole mixture is going to turn into a pale yellow. Okay? So that's how you kind of know. And it's going to get it's going to keep getting stiff. The more you cook it, the more it's going to get stiff. We're going to cook it till it turns pale yellow, light and fluffy. That's what we're looking for, and I'll show you. And you want to be whisking it in the area that's directly touching the heat, which is on the bottom and the sides. You don't have to be like this right in the middle, because that won't really be doing anything. Okay? He's going on the sides, cleaning off the edges where it's touching the bottom, and on the bottom directly. Okay, keep going. At the same time, we're going to check our water. See, it's got a slow boil. That's perfect. If it's boiling too high, you'll have scrambled eggs for sure. And this is our sabayon. Okay. See how fluffy it looks? If you were to overcook this, it's gained volume, which means it's grown. It will knock back down again and become really stiff and grainy. So you want to keep it to the point where it's light and fluffy. Now, while this is really hot, we're going to add our gelatin to it. You want to do that first because while it's hot, that's when it's best going to dissolve. Okay. You're going to take them all and just squeeze out the excess liquid from it. Yeah. Taking out all the excess liquid. You see how like gummy and kind of mushy and slimy looking it looks now? That's good. And don't ever add this into your recipe in a big ball like this. Open it up. It'll be easier to dissolve it. And always add it to something hot once it's bloomed. All right. We're going to just stir that up and dissolve it in there. And you'll see it dissolves immediately. And once it's cold, it'll set again, but it'll be dispersed in your entire mousse. All right, so at this point, the next thing that's going to go in here is your ganache. And remember, these two things are hot. Or this is kind of warm and this one's hot. So you don't need to be careful of how you add this in here. Okay, so that gets whipped. And you don't have to be careful at this point because you don't have the heavy cream in here, so you're not going to over whip anything. Just make sure it's completely, that out of there. Let me use this one now. Once I add the cream, I want to use one that has less prawns in it because I don't want to over whip it. Now, this is really warm, and it's a large ratio in comparison to our heavy cream, so we have to cool this down a bit. So I usually will cool this over an ice bath, and I'll use the same one that I just used for my gelatin. Thank you. That's better. All right, so we're just going to cool this till it feels cool to the touch. And then we'll fold in our whipped cream. All right, and when you're checking the coolness of this, use the back of your hand because this part of your hand is not as sensitive. It's done. It's ready. You can see the difference in the thickness of it, you see? All right? All right. Now we're ready for our whipped cream. A lot of recipes will ask you to fold it in, but if you do it carefully, and I'm going to show you what I do, it's kind of like doing the same thing you would do with a plastic spatula, but doing it with a whisk. We're going to give it quarter turns and just kind of lightly just fold it in. We're going to put about half of it in and then do the other half. You see I'm going around right through. Trusty whisk. Get all that yummy goodness down in there. All right. Just going to gently mix that in. And the result is going to be still a pretty loose cream, and that's normal. That's the way it's supposed to look. All right. That is looking good. And there you have it, folks. You have your chocolate cremeux. Absolutely delicious. Wait till you taste it, then you're really going to be clapping.